Welcome back to another episode of Financially Irresponsible. I am your host, Rakim Sabri, coach, consultant, and author. And I'm super excited to be bringing another episode to you. I know the last one got a little heavy, and we ended off with an exercise around affirmations that I hope you had an opportunity to participate in, and feel free to definitely write into us and let us know how that worked out. Today's topic is a little bit different. We're going to be talking a little bit less about money and a little bit more about the concept of money and the relationship that money has on different variables or different aspects, if you will, of our lives, right? And so today's question is money objective, right? Is money objective, or is it a subjective thing, right? And so we're going to touch on a bunch of different topics, and we'll get started with the role of culture on money. So we talked a lot about, in the last episode, we talked a lot about the beliefs that we have about money. We talked a lot about how those beliefs impact behavior. And certainly all of those things are internal, right? Those are things that we kind of have to deal with in the quietness of our minds. But what about the external factors, the external variables that ultimately impact our behaviors, right? What about the role of culture on money? And within culture, right, it's such a heavy or complicated title, because we participate in many cultures, right? We participate in a very broad kind of communal, country-based culture, right? We participate within the culture of our specific, maybe ethnic group, or our specific family's culture. We participate in the culture of the corporations that we work for, the culture of the schools that we attend. And so everybody has their own little cultural kind of bubbles that we navigate, and that certainly leave an imprint or an impact on how we move and behave with money. So the first line item that I wanted to kind of dive into is this idea around education within culture, right? So was education something that was talked about in the household? Of course, we think very positively about education. People should go out and they should be educated. What does that look like for you? Does that look like reading a book? Does that look like traveling? Does that look like communicating with different people about their experiences, right? We talk about diversity and we talk about inclusion. Is that sufficient education? Or does formal education take precedent? And within that, in pursuing education, right, we have this student loan crisis that many people are starting to re-worry about, right? There's this reawakening of anxiety or fear around having to pay back the student loans, because the moratorium on repayments is about to go away. So when we think about our early experiences with higher education or formal education, and what that looks like, and how that impacts our financial lives, was the juice worth the squeeze, right? Did we go out and acquire all of these trillions of dollars of debt for an education, and did that education serve us? So we think about this idea, and I go back in time, right? As I'm having this conversation, I think about the process of taking the SATs, applying to different schools, doing visits to different schools. And there was this one statement that was made by somebody who was in a position of authority over me, and they said, everybody takes out student loans, don't worry about it. When I had questions about, how am I going to afford college? And this idea that you're going out and you're taking these loans at 17, 18 years old, and you're going into a field that may or may not have a positive return on investment. So this idea of going to school, getting a formal education in a specific field that may be aligned to your goals, or think about the role of culture in our decision making. I have friends who their parents told them what field they were going to go into. Their parents said, "Hey, this is the focus for you. You are going to go and you're going to become an engineer. You are going to go and you're going to become a doctor. You are going to go and you're going to become a lawyer." And then there are families who say, "Well, it's good enough that you graduated high school. If you want to go to college, cool, I'm not paying for it." Or if you want to go to college, or yes, you should go to college, but whatever it is that you decide you want to do, go ahead and do it. We think about the ripple effect of the insistence of going into a particular field of study, or the lack of assistance, right? The freedom to choose and making a decision to go into a field of study that is aligned to our passion, but doesn't necessarily equate to the big bucks. And we get stuck with this massive debt repayment that is now causing us financial anxiety and financial stress and potentially financial trauma, because it impacts what we're able to do moving forward, right? Are we able to purchase a home? Are we able to get a job outside of that field? Do we feel comfortable making that pivot after spending so much time, so much money being educated for a particular path? I'd like you to think about, if you pursued formal higher education, whether or not the job that pays you today has anything to do with the specific discipline that you studied for. And if it does, do you enjoy what it is that you do? There are many people who feel trapped within a particular career path because of the fact that they committed however many years ago to a particular career path based off of their education, based off of the amount of loans that they took out, and they're afraid to try something different because they don't want to feel like it was a waste. And so we think about the role of culture, this culture of taking out student debt, this culture of involvement on the part of our families or our parents that says you're going to either do this or do that, or that it's okay if you just decide not to do anything. This culture of prioritizing the college degree over paid trades. There's so many intersecting cultures that we're having to navigate in figuring out what do we want to be when we grow up. Does culture influence the purchases that we make, right? Was it impressed upon you as a child or as a young adult that you should go out and you should become an owner of a home? And if that was impressed upon you, did you grow up in a home? Did you grow up in a house that your parents owned or that whoever was your caretaker owned? Or did you grow up in an environment that you rented? And the situations or the circumstances around your renting created this desire in your family or in you to own, so that you don't have to repeat the experiences that you had in that environment. What about the role of culture on the bad habits that we have, right? There is this idea, this term, buzz phrase, that is generational curses, right? It's super popular right now. I talk about breaking generational curses. We talk about breaking generational traumas. We talk about generational wealth. And so this idea of generational anything speaks to life beyond the life that we're living right now, right? Our children, our children's children, our children's children's children. And what's interesting about this idea about generational curses is that It is really a reframe of affirming positive patterns, beliefs, or behaviors within our family. So that might be a generational success, or affirming negative patterns, behaviors, or beliefs in the form of generational curses. And by ultimately yielding to this idea or this belief that there are generational curses or familial generational curses, you are affirming. So we talked about affirmations in our last episode. You are affirming this idea that something is wrong, this pattern is wrong, it's something that exists, and that you have no power to change that. And so there's this whole movement around breaking the generational curses, but there's not a lot of information around what that reframe looks like in acknowledging the power of the words that we use to actually do so. And so there's this idea of self-fulfilling prophecies that I talk about in my book, Financially Irresponsible, the show's named after, that exist in two ways. The self-fulfilling prophecy of what you believe about yourself, regardless of what anybody else around you tells you. And so just to kind of give you a very simple example, maybe you believe that you're weak and everybody around you is like, oh, you're so strong, you're so strong, you're so strong. They've seen demonstrations of your strength. But in your mind, what you believe and what you repeat to yourself is that you're weak. Well, the reality of the situation is that you're going to be weak because it doesn't matter what the people around you think. It matters what you think. And the other side of that coin is the self-fulfilling prophecy that says this is the destiny, or this is the reality that you're destined to live. Everybody around you is telling you you're weak, but you think that you're strong. You know that you're strong, but everybody around you is telling you, oh, you're weak, you're weak, you're weak. There's somebody stronger than you. They point out the people that are stronger than you. Instead of highlighting your strengths, they highlight the fact that you're weak. And ultimately, you yield to the belief and to the noise of everybody on the outside. And ultimately, you commit to this self-fulfilling prophecy of you're weak, not because that's the reality of the situation by way of your actual strength, but because of how you yielded to the external variables that influence how you perceive yourself. And so when we think about these self-fulfilling prophecies and how those self-fulfilling prophecies manifest within our lives financially, I'm poor. Our family is poor. I don't deserve to be wealthy. I don't deserve to have money. People who have money are bad. And we reframe those statements using the affirmations that I encourage you, and I still encourage you to use. You can start to make one of those self-fulfilling prophecies work in your favor, because it doesn't matter what everybody else believes or what everybody else sees. It matters what it is that you believe or what it is that you see. And so we want to get away from affirming the negative beliefs that we have about ourselves, about money, about the role of money in our lives, and start to affirm, whether that be verbally, whether that be through active thought, whether that be through visualization, the positive beliefs and the positive ideas and habits that we have relating to money, so that we can draw that, or we can bring that reality into focus. And so there's this idea of this book called The Power of Habit. And within that book, the author discusses what is referred to as a habit loop. And I'm going to make reference to this very quickly, because within the habit loop, the concept that is being articulated is that you cannot break a bad habit. You can only replace it with a positive habit or a worse habit. And so when you think about the routines that we have, bring this back to money, guys. When we think about the routines that we have around money and whether or not they are beneficial to our financial goals and values or detrimental to our financial goals and values, many people just simply try to break the habit without replacing it with a new habit, a positive habit, a beneficial habit. And so when we think about this habit loop, there is a stimulus and there's a reward. And within that stimulus and reward structure, we have to figure out what is the thing that is giving us pleasure or joy or excitement in our bad habits or in our bad beliefs. What is the trigger that is making us remember that this is something that we want? I use an example of going to stop at Starbucks or a Dunkin' Donuts or popular coffee spot on your way to work, right? Once this becomes a habit, a routine, now you are willing to show up to work 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late. As long as you got that hot coffee, you need to have that hot beverage in your hand before you get into the building, or else your mood's going to be thrown off. You're not going to be yourself. And I've tried this and I've been successful with this. What I realized is that it's not the caffeine in the beverage that makes me feel like myself in the morning. It's having the warm beverage as I walk in the door that makes me feel like, oh, I'm ready to start my day. And so in replacing the habit loop, instead of trying to break the habit loop, what I did instead was take the money. Let's say it cost $5 to buy you a signature drink from Starbucks. And I know that's a little light. Let's say it costs you $5 to buy you the signature drink. You take that $5 and you buy you a box of herbal tea or a box of black tea that will be maybe 20 or 30 different single serve warm drinks. Well, now you've replaced the stimulus, right? You're going to work. So it's early in the morning. That's a stimulus. The reward is I get the hot beverage. Well, now you're at work. You have the warm or the hot beverage in this box of 20 different bags of tea. And instead of spending $5 every day, what you can do is take that $5 and simply move it into savings. So you're not changing anything, right? You're still spending the $5. You're still having the warm beverage, and you're still responding to the stimuli of having to go to work. But instead of doing something that is ultimately detrimental to your finances, you're doing something that is going to benefit your finances because you're actually putting money away. You're actually saving money. And so we think about that example and we expand it out to the very many different money behaviors, right? And we can get very crafty or creative when it comes to how we choose to replace these habits. We can make small, incremental, but impactful financial decisions that benefit us in replacing the bad habits or the undesirable habits instead of trying to just cut it off completely cold turkey. And so when we do that, we can affirm ourselves, right? We are affirming ourselves because we're giving ourselves this reward that we're looking for. Okay, great. This is something that I want to do. I want to save more money. I want to spend less money. So I am affirming myself by doing that thing, and I get to have the reward on the other side of that. Now, you might push back, right, and say, oh, well, I like coffee instead of tea. Well, you can figure out a way to maybe instead of buying a box of tea, buy a bag of coffee and make you a new drink every day, right? The idea here is to come up with alternatives or behaviors that align to your current pattern of stimuli, reward, outcome that are not going to be necessarily ending your habit or throwing out your bad habit, but replacing it with a new one. And so you can affirm this behavior verbally afterwards by saying, I am making positive decisions towards financial change in my life. I have made positive decisions to affirm financial change or to have financial change in my life. I will continue to make these positive changes in my financial life. And so by affirming this behavior, you're kind of like giving yourself this verbal, spiritual, psychological pat on the back to say, hey, good job. I'm doing the thing that I set out to do. And in the process, I'm still getting the outcome that gives me my reward, right? This warm beverage. And I go so far as to take it to the extreme and saying, I might be viewed crazy for saying this, but drinking a warm glass of water, right, or a warm mug of water, no flavor, no nothing, but you're still getting the sensation, right, at the bare root of this behavior. You're still getting that same sensation of drinking the warm beverage with tied into the stimuli of I have to go to work. And so understanding the psychology behind these reactions or these interactions is super helpful in being able to exact change in our behaviors, in our relationships with money, and our outcomes with money. And we can start to shift the role of these external factors, whether that be going to work, whether that be going to school, whether that be education, whether that be the role of family and family influence on our decisions. We can start to change those variables to something that we can control. So I want to thank you guys again for showing up. I'm super excited to continue this series with you and to continue sharing these tidbits of wisdom and information with you. I encourage you to visit our YouTube, check out all of the other episodes that we've done. And if you want to find more on me, you can visit me at my website or on all my social medias at Rakim Sabri or rakimsabri.com. This has been another episode of Financially Irresponsible, and I am your host, Rakim Sabri. Until next time.
Nick Augustino right here at the East Side Restaurant. We always have the complete full dinner menu. Knockwurst, bratwurst, sauerbraten, potato pancakes, red cabbage, rice pudding, cream pies, all the desserts that Germany had to offer. I always do something different. Yes, I do. I brought seafood to the beer garden at the East Side Restaurant. East Side Restaurant, your German destination restaurant in Connecticut. Tiki-taka, hoy, hoy, hoy!
I'm your host, Kurt Barwis. Today, I have a very special guest, Dr. Andrew Lin.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Veterans Corner. My name's Chuck Wooden.
Decision for ourselves for this week, if we want to be made well.
Hi, welcome to the crack of dawn. It's Dawn Lombardi. I'm starting the painting. It's going to be the cliffs with some water. Love it.
He took me on the sets of Lost in Space, Batman.
Everybody has a story. What's yours? Until next time.